Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whatever you find a way to watch this podcast. It's me, Omar Shamborja, the Burger Popper, on an easy Sunday afternoon, not morning. And I'm here with a friend of the podcast. We got Alex Scheer of the Max Sports Connection podcast. He's been doing some great things in the off season. Really great to see. We're all just watching this off season clock slash calendar just go by, even though it's March Madness. A lot of us are football guys at heart. I've hardly watched any March Madness because the work schedule is tough, but there's indoor football league games on YouTube that I can pull up anytime, that does not have to correspond with my work schedule. But enough yapping from me. Alex, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. How's everything going?
Omar, thank you for having me. Things are going good. As you said, busy here in this football off season, but for me, I covered the entire MAC, so I don't really get an off season. I was just at the MAC basketball tournament. I covered 14 games in 4 days. It was a great opportunity to be up in Cleveland. Saw Kent State win the women's side, saw Akron win the men's side. A great opportunity in Cleveland. Had a chance to meet with the commissioner in a media press conference, and then looking at turning some attention now to baseball, softball, tennis, some lacrosse. Here are some of the spring sports, and like I said, for me covering the MAC, there is no off season, but we do have a football off season. And I know you've got some great stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hoping, I don't really cover any sport other than, football. Maybe some basketball here if it's conference realignment, but hopefully I guess I can get the listeners slash viewers on my channel to go to you for Olympic sports coverage. Because I guess I think you're the only person I have on here. I guess aside from Dwayne from the Yard HBCU covers HBCU Olympic sports, but who covers that stuff? So I urge all
The
my
MAC
listeners,
just
whether
crowned
oh no,
the
go ahead.
MAC just crowned yeah, the MAC just crowned their gymnastics champions this weekend. We had Western Michigan win the team gymnastics title. Um, and Kent State and Ball State actually split the regular season title. This was the tournament meet championship. I don't have my full terminology down with when it comes to gymnastics, but a big hats off to Western Michigan for winning the conference tournament championship.
Yeah, absolutely. That too. I mean, I think that's the first gymnastics drop I've ever heard on this podcast. But that
They
just
didn't
that
even pay
just
me for that one.
that just like that, that just expands my point that, for Olympic sports coverage, it does not matter if you're a Mac fan, just follow Alex because I mean, shoot, just so hardworking. And I mean, the coverage is great, obviously. I mean, but I guess back to football, I can't expand much on gymnastics or much other Olympic sports. Uh I think it was like last week or a couple weeks ago, the Chicago Bears announced that this whole thing's been a drama with the whole stadium. They announced that they're pursuing, instead of Arlington Heights, they're pursuing a lakefront site for their stadium. And the one thing that they confirmed was that it was going to be an indoor stadium. I do think that the Arlington Park proposal was indoors, but I don't think it was like as explicitly stated in the reports as I guess this new announcement for lakefront. So location drama aside, we have another NFC North team with the indoor stadium joining the Lions and the Vikings. And that's a second NFC North team within the Max footprint with an indoor stadium, which naturally that means for the Kornacki of bowls, let's have a bowl game here in Chicago if you're the Mac. And I wrote an article which I'll link below in the description about the merits of a Chicago bowl game, which I mean Chicago is the third largest media market in the country. I think third largest city in general.
Mhm.
It's a great place to have bowl. There is no bowl game, right? There is not really much happening in the Chicago Metro in the college football season, aside from like Northwestern, Northern Illinois, of course Notre Dame, but like Notre Dame's more national program than a program exclusive to that region. So I think it would be a great idea. So I guess Alex, I want to hear like your initial thoughts before I dive into some of the reasons for, and I guess and in the cases against having a bowl game in Chicago.
Yeah, so I think when you look at adding another bowl game, I know how much you love your bowl game, so you're not gonna like this opinion right off the rip, but I'm actually very much against it. Not because I think Chicago is a bad city. In fact, I love the city of Chicago. I think that your initial kind of in our pre-show discussions, the idea of them being Max Central, being right, close to the heart of when you look at it, there's I think the bowl market is so saturated. I think bowls are going to start to mean even less now that we're expanding the playoffs even more. We're going to have a 12 team here starting this year, and then looks like a 14 team starting in 2026. For me, this idea to add a bowl game, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of these bowl games shut down in favor of this playoff. I mean, money's not going to be there. TV, and I could be just over projecting, and I recognize that, but I think there's going to be a lot of the sponsors are going to want to have a piece of the pie of the playoffs, which that's fair. I think I mean, we just saw Barstool pull out of being the Arizona Bowl sponsor after this last year. So I think we're going to start seeing that Barstool's probably going to want to try to get in a little bit on that ESPN money, which again, I understand. But I think adding another bowl game, especially right now, not the move because of how unsettled the playoff landscape is. Once we see what happens, I think then maybe we can talk about a potential expansion or maybe reducing and changing the number of bowl games. I mean, you're not going to get rid of staples like the Sun Bowl. That's not going to get tossed out. You're not going to get rid of probably the Fenway Bowl, because again, another staple, the Armed Forces Bowl. Would not be surprised at all to see other bowl games such as the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl or whoever sponsors that now. I would not be surprised to see that one go out of the way. You've got the Rose Bowl in LA already. Sorry, in Pasadena. Forgive me, California people. In Pasadena, you don't. I don't see the landscape being kind and receptive as of right now to a new bowl game with the uncertainty of college football moving forward.
Yeah, and
I
I
told you
do
you weren't
agree.
going to like that opinion.
I know it's very grim, but it's something that I've thought of a lot, which is why like I am very eager to hear what happens from the bowl season meetings, annual meetings, which happen to be in El Paso this year. I've emailed a couple times, but they haven't answered me. I've wanted to be a fly on the wall, but that's
Sure.
neither here nor there. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like that's something that I'm curious about, like what happens with the bowl schedule because it seems like for bowl games, like 2024 is the absolute worst year for the 12-year playoff to start from a calendar perspective because the third Saturday of December is December 21st, which notoriously cramps the bowl schedule. I think it was like 2019 where it was like the same situation where they even moving I think two bowl games to Friday, the Friday before the third Friday of December was big news for college football. So it's I can only imagine now with a 12-team playoff, how congested is it going to be? And of course, Army Navy's not going anywhere off the second weekend of the season or second weekend of December. So that complicates matters too because those are two of the biggest money makers in the group of five if we're talking bowl games.
Hmm.
Just because of their stash in the country. So yeah, I don't like it, but I guess I've seen it coming, and it's been something that's been on my mind a lot. Um, and I would have to agree, I guess, but I guess some positives I can see from a Mac perspective, and I guess I wanted to pick your brain about I guess things you've noticed. So in crunching data for for my article and of course for this podcast, looking at the attendance of the MAC championship games since they moved to Ford Field, Northern Illinois. I don't think people realize how much of an outlier Northern Illinois is in the MAC. People think when they think outliers in the conference, they think Buffalo, they think now UMass, but Northern Illinois is just as bad. I think Northern Illinois is actually is closer. It's like it's as close or as far away from Detroit as Buffalo is. And so the same applies for it in relation to, the Michigan MAC schools and what and then I guess the Northern Ohio schools like your Toledo's and your Akrons, where it's kind of isolated out there. And doing my research, Northern Illinois has, I think, the three lowest attendance figures in MAC championship history since it moved to Detroit, and the third lowest average of any team that's played in Detroit. So I guess a bowl game in Chicago, I guess sort of like a quick lane bowl 2.0 or a quick lane bowl light in Chicago. How would that benefit Northern Illinois fans? And I guess is a travel to Detroit something that you've heard of? I guess heard a lot of Northern Illinois fans complaining about a lot in your coverage in the MAC.
So I think anytime Northern Illinois is in Detroit, they're there for a MAC championship. You don't hear a lot of people complain about competing for a championship. So I think when you look at Northern Illinois kind of being there and whatnot, yes, it's a tough draw. It's a tough road for them. I've got those attendance numbers pulled up as well. Um, and it's not that I think Northern Illinois struggles to get their fans excited because you look at, they had I'm looking at it 6 straight years they were in that championship game from 2010 to 2015. This is a Northern Illinois program that, I mean, you're talking about their lower numbers too. They had games where they had 21,000 people there. And obviously that's also with Bowling Green in that game as well. But there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of what could be in terms of these fan bases, in terms of whatever. Looking at Buffalo too, you've got Buffalo as one of the lowest attended. You talk about those outliers. So I think that in terms of competing for a championship, yeah, it's a little bit of a hike, but I don't think fans are too upset about it. That's a 5 hour drive from DeKalb to Detroit, about 4.5, 5 hours from Buffalo. And if you just fly over the lake from Buffalo, that's a hop and a skip. That's not, it's nothing too crazy. But I think when you really look at these attendance numbers, I think that Northern Illinois historically, I mean, they were not originally like an FCS slash Division 1A program for a long time. They've been in and out of the MAC a couple times. And just kind of historically, you look at what this program is and really who they are. This is not a team that was FCS. I mean, they were an independent. They were in the former interstate intercollegiate athletic conference that was not an FCS, or I guess now yeah, I guess now FCS. They were also part of the Big West as recent as the 90s. The Big West, an FB or yeah, an FCS conference. This is not a program who has always had a lot of people supporting them. I mean, they've got a lot of supporters, not a lot of people supporting them. And I think there's a huge difference there. This is a program, and a great friend of my program, Russ Eisenstein, would tell you all about their history. He is a wizard when it comes to their history. That's the voice of the Ohio Bobcats. He grew up Northern Illinois fan. He grew up in that area. His father just as much of a history wizard when it comes to NIU football. Um, but I think when you really look at it, they didn't rejoin the MAC until 97. So I think the expectations are just a little bit different. Now, that being said, I think that they would probably travel well to a bowl game in Chicago. When I pull up attendance numbers, because you pulled up the attendance numbers for the MAC championship, I pulled up attendance numbers for the Quick Lane Bowl since I felt like that was a little bit more comparable. Um, Duke, back in 2017, Duke, Northern Illinois, 20,000 people were at that game. This is the day after Christmas, mind you. And I think that's what's important. I think if you're going to create a bowl game and you want to put it in Chicago in this new stadium, I think it's important to factor in the date. This last year, we saw Bowling Green take on Minnesota, Bowling Green in back-to-back quick lane bowls. 28,000 people were on hand. 28,000 reported people were on hand. The previous 2 years, 22,000, 23,000. The biggest quick lane bowl we've had was almost 30 or 35,000 people. Is Pittsburgh, Eastern Michigan back in 2019. And I think what you're going to see is people don't want to travel around the holidays more than they already have to. Flights are more expensive, gas is more expensive, hotels are more expensive. You got fortunate with Eastern Michigan being right up the road from Detroit. They're an hour drive at worst. A lot of Eastern Michigan alumni in the Detroit area. Most people have the day off from work after Christmas, the day after Christmas. That worked out well, and that's actually again one of the highest attended quick lane bowls in quick lane bowl history. But I think proximity was a huge part of that, and I think we would see the same thing for Northern Illinois if we had a bowl game in Chicago. DeKalb's only about an hour, if and it's I think it's closer to about 45 minutes. A lot of Northern Illinois alumni live and work in Chicago. To me, it would make sense to put one there, but that would also be with the expectation that Northern Illinois is going to qualify for a bowl game every year. They haven't for the last couple of years. They haven't. This is not, and this is nothing against Coach Thomas Hammock. He's done a great job, I think, over at Northern Illinois. It's just that's where the program's at right now. They're not a bowl team. So creating a bowl game to appease a fan base that's an outlier in a conference feels like dangerous territory to me.
I think that's a good point. I really do. Especially about Northern Illinois, like to appease one fan base. I also do have a counter about that later on. I guess with our next point. But I also think the bowl would also cater to Ball State fans as well. I mean, even though like they're about the same distance from Chicago as they are to Detroit, but even then, like
Hmm.
about like 3.5 hour drive to Chicago and whatnot. But I think that's a really good point too. I think data is everything, and I think the MAC does well with like pre-Christmas games as I guess as bad as it sounds, really. I mean, I don't think pre-Christmas bowl games are a bad thing. I just think it's like maybe there's like a stigma for the casual fan where it's like all the group of five teams play before Christmas and then the Power Five teams play after Christmas, which is why like the Arizona Bowl's date selection of almost on New Year's, some years I think it was on New Year's Eve, I think. Um, where I think that's just something that's good for the group of five to have that change of pace. But I do think that the Quick Lane Bowl being on the day after Christmas like is symptomatic of the attendance.
So I wanted to make a quick correction. I apologize. I misspoke. Northern Illinois did qualify and won their bowl game this last year, the Camellia Bowl against Arkansas State 21-19. Wanted to apologize, make sure I put that back out there. It was the year before they did not qualify for a bowl game going 3-9 in the regular season. So wanted to correct my mistake on that. I do apologize for the erroneous reporting.
Oh no, I mean it happens. I mean I'm still thinking about the fake field goal. That's really the only thing I can think of just like thinking about that game. I'm sure that's what a lot of people are thinking of when they think about this year's Camellia Bowl. That's the only
Sure.
reason. That's the only thing that's why it's still in my head. But I guess something I wanted to ask, like, yeah, I guess having that bowl, I guess for the sake of Northern Illinois, is kind of flawed. But I guess what about having the Chicago Bowl as something as I guess like a backup to the Quick Lane Bowl and like a reward for their champions because as sad as crazy as it seems, like we had the two best MAC teams probably since I think 2016 play in the MAC title game in Miami of Ohio, who beat Cincinnati for the first time since 2005. You had Toledo coming to the MAC title game 11-1. Both schools were deserving to play a Power Five team, even if it was 5-7 Minnesota. They deserve to shine on that stage, in my opinion. I mean, this is no discredit to their to their bowl opponents. App State for Miami playing in the Cure Bowl, and then of course Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl against Toledo. Those were great. Those are fine squads. But I think with the direction that the sport's going in, where there's the continuing growth split or the continually growing split between the Power Five and the Group of Five, where you want to see your champions stick to the Power Five. I feel like a Chicago Bowl is a great opportunity for the MAC to have a Power Five game to send its champion to, especially with a lot of these conferences growing in size, where it's like with the new bowl cycle, like the Big 12 will have 16 teams. And I know for the next 2 years of the bowl cycle, they're sending all the former Pac-12 teams to former Pac-12 bowl games and
Hmm.
that's that, which is okay. But for the next bowl cycle, like you'll have a lot of Big 12 teams you have to put into bowl games. There's 18 teams in the SEC, and I think only like 9 bowl spots. Like they're gonna have to figure that problem out too for the ACC, and that doesn't even factor in Notre Dame. I think actually 17, yeah, it's 17 football members, 18 full members, so 18 teams for 9 or 10 bowl games. So Chicago. I mean, I feel like for the Big 12 and the ACC, the two conferences on the lower end of the Power Four, I think that's a great opportunity having a game in Chicago to impede in Big Ten territory and, just steal recruits, steal exposure and whatnot in that territory. And furthermore, more importantly for the MAC, a chance to send its champion to play against a Power Five team because, I mean, not only has the Big Ten hardly participated in the Quick Lane Bowl in the latest bowl cycle, but I mean, the Mac's right to not send its champion in back-to-back games to Detroit because it's bad for attendance, frankly. And I mean, it's just bad for fan bases, really. So I want your thoughts on that.
So I think when it comes to sending your champion to the Quick Lane Bowl, I believe that one's a $2 million payout, which is the highest payout for the Mid American Conference in terms of automatic bowl tie-ins. The conference has four auto tie-ins. You've got the Bahamas Bowl versus Conference USA. You got the Arizona Bowl versus a Mountain West squad. The Potato Bowl versus a Mountain West squad. Then the Quick Lane Bowl versus a Big Ten. There's a reason that one's the biggest payout. It's because you get a Big Ten opponent. Now, in terms of other tie-ins, the MAC has seven other tie-ins that they could play in: 68 Ventures Bowl, Boca Raton, Camellia Bowl, Cure Bowl, Frisco Bowl, Myrtle Beach Bowl, and New Mexico Bowl. The rest of those are against group of five opponents. I don't have a problem with that. However, with what we're about to see with these playoffs, I think that we're going to see the champion get an opportunity to play in the playoffs. Ideally, obviously, it sounds like the parameter and the bar is going to be has to be undefeated kind of group of five. Has to be the best ranked group of five, and I feel like the problem with that is, and I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud. I'm sure ESPN sending FBI agents to my apartment right now. Um, ESPN will put whatever group of five champion they want in the playoffs because of the story they want to tell. No disrespect to Liberty. I did not think that they were deserving. Now, I don't think that the group of five as a whole was overall deserving of a um, New Year's Six Bowl this year. I know that is contradictory to everything I've been saying for the last several years. But I feel like Liberty losing in the fashion that they did kind of proved that point to the anti-expansionist while simultaneously watching Florida State not get into the playoffs also hurt their argument. So, anti-expansionist, I'm not with you, I'm not against you. I'm just telling you these are the facts. While I don't think Liberty was deserving this year, I do think Florida State was to a degree deserving. We have disagreements on that after how they lost to Georgia. That's fine. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see the ESPN say, "Hey, this is the group of five champion we're going to prop up." They're already talking about Memphis being a favorite this year. Memphis had a great year last year. I do not want to discredit that. They're returning a lot of starters. They're looking really good. Very few people are talking about Miami, Ohio. I think Miami, Ohio is returning the best defense in the Mid American Conference. Toledo is taking a step back offensively. You lost Penny Boone to Louisville. You lost DeQuan Finn to Baylor. Quinyon Mitchell is going in the probably in the top 10 of the NFL draft this year. You're losing other defensive starters for Toledo. Bowling Green, they're losing a couple defensive key pieces. I think they're going to look good overall on offense. Defensively, a little bit concerned with what they have going on. I think Miami, Ohio, and when you look at their schedule, they've got Northwestern, they've got Notre Dame, they've got Cincinnati. Frankly, I think they could win all of those games. Notre Dame is my one that I hesitate to say they can go in and win that game. Cincinnati, I don't know how much of a step forward they take this year. And Miami gets to play them at home. You get Northwestern again this year, a Northwestern team Miami beat 2 years ago when they weren't bowl eligible. Miami went 5-7 that year. This is a much better Miami team than what we saw a couple years ago. This is a much better Miami team than what we saw last year. And I think what's going to happen is Miami could go undefeated or 11-1 or 12-1 with a championship and not get talked about because the media is not talking about them. ESPN's not talking about them. So I think it's going to be a disservice to send them to another bowl game. I really do. And I did not mean for this to turn into a playoff tirade. I apologize. But I think we're going to see the narratives go however ESPN wants them to go. ESPN will prop up who they want to prop up. Call it what it is. And if they want to prop up Memphis, I support that. Memphis is a great program. They've done a great job. If they want to prop up Miami, Ohio, I support it. Miami's going to do a great job this year. But I think that the playoffs need fixed. You put all champions in. Until then, You are 100% right. Your conference champion deserves an opportunity against a Power Five program to test their mettle and say, hey, look, I think now if you put this in Chicago, I don't think you make it a Big Ten game. The Big Ten is already the one initially contracted in the Quick Lane Bowl. I say you make it a Big 12 game. You've got Iowa State real close. You've got Oklahoma relatively close. You've got these other Big 10 or these Big 12 programs. Now Cincinnati's in the Big 12. You've got BYU who's now in the Big 12. These are other Big 12 opponents that I think would deserve an opportunity to play a quality G5. And I'm not saying that 11 or 12-1 Miami or 12-1 Toledo is going to go and smoke an 8-4, 9-3 Cincinnati. I'm not saying that. But I think you pair that game up, that's what's going to draw the eyes. It's unfortunately, and I recognize where we're at as a landscape. It's not the MAC team that's drawing eyes until we get multiple years of a MAC team doing the same thing, a la Northern Illinois, early to mid 2010s. It's going to be the Power Five program that's going to draw the eyes. I really think an Iowa State Miami Ohio game in a Chicago Bowl, you could call the Chicago Deep Dish Pizza Bowl. Come on, right there, stealing the old Quick Lane Bowl name there a little bit, but that would be a great matchup. I genuinely believe that would be a fantastic bowl game in a historic city, in a great city. To me, that would make sense. But I do think that that it would almost be a slap in the face to win your conference as a 12-1, 13-0 team and not even sniff the playoffs. But that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree about, the playoff is still flawed and it's becoming more like an invitational. I know that's the term that's been thrown around and it just sucks to see because the bowls are the invitationals, the bowls
Yep.
are, you know, they're the games that are just postseason celebrations that really don't mean much. They just cap nice season, but it's like, and especially like with the rumor, which thank goodness it got shut down, but the rumor of like the auto bids per conference, the multiple auto bids per conference was just so ridiculous. It just shows that the playoff,
Agreed.
yeah, is becoming an invitational. But I do agree that until we get, I guess, equity in the playoff for all the group of five conferences, that I mean, having bowls against Power Five teams it's the best solution, honestly, at this point. I guess the best solution like for these conferences where instead of having just one game where you have to leverage, um, I guess, team ability or team strength with geography and making money, you have two games where one can be the Champions Bowl, the other one can, whether it be the Quick Lane Bowl, or I guess say if you have like one of the Michigan MAC schools ends up with a 10-win season or wins the MAC, you put them in the Quick Lane Bowl, and then you have, I mean, the Chicago Bowl for another strong program in the MAC that had a
Mm-hmm.
good year against a Power Five team. And I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree, I guess, on your point with like the Big 12 schools being the better, um, I guess the better pairing because of course you mentioned the Midwest schools and you got your Kansas schools, but I'm fascinated with BYU because BYU is of course a national program, given that they're tied with a religious faith. BYU fans will show up definitely. They definitely will show up. I mean, they'll travel well, especially even if it's against a MAC team, they'll travel well
Mm-hmm.
because, it's a national program. So that's the team that would fascinate me out of the Big 12. But I totally agree where it's like, I mean, there's a reason. I mean, Mike Oresco, I think he's done a great job. I think out of all the conference commissioners in the group of five, I think he's the best at branding and the
Mm-hmm.
one that I guess stands for the power, I guess, let's say power six, the group of five the most because I mean it was revealed he was like the only one that stood against the money allotment, the money distribution. And I think his branding, part of the branding that goes so well with the American is the Power Five bowl games, where if you look each year, they already have two, I think, yeah, two automatic bowl games against Power Five schools. Granted, they're both against the ACC, but that's one more than the MAC has. That's one more than the Mountain West has. That's two more than Conference USA is guaranteed in most years. And that's
Mm-hmm.
two more than what the Sun Belt has. I mean, the Sun Belt played its first, bowl game against a Power Five team after 22 years of being a conference this past year. So it's clear that these games matter. And I think having a second tie-in, which I mean, I guess it would more function like a first tie-in, given the way things have gone with the Big Ten, like a tie-in with a Power Five, Power Four conference. I think it would be a great move and a great way to reward your champions and increase the brand power of the MAC. Because I see the black flag, you know, the Jolly Roger for the MAC, like that. It's clear that these games matter to the conference. Like they got the Jolly Roger, and it's something
Yep.
that they get that gets the conference and its fans excited.
So I kind of want to piggyback off this idea with the tie-ins. I think ESPN could do a better job of this. I think when it comes to tie-ins, you have to give you almost have to force conferences' hands. Um, the Big Ten wants, 1,000 teams in the playoffs. Obviously, that's not going to happen. You're not putting 0 and 12 Indiana in the playoffs. That's not happening. But also, I don't think you need to be putting 8 and 4, I don't know, Wisconsin in the playoffs. I think what needs to be happening, and the Big Ten, no disrespect to them, I don't think has done a great job of really honoring this tie-in. Because the fun fact for those listening at home, this Quick Lane Bowl was not initially a Big Ten and MAC bowl game. This was initially when it became the Quick Lane Bowl back in 2014 was a Big Ten ACC bowl game. Um, it's not that case anymore. This officially became a MAC dedicated tie-in 2019, I want to say. Um, and so now it's predominantly a Mid-American Conference bowl game versus Big Ten. However, we've seen the Big Ten play in this game. You're going to love this. Once this last year, we have not seen the Big Ten play in this game since 2016 when they played Boston College. That was the last time, or sorry, since 2018 when they played Georgia Tech. That was the last time it was an ACC and Big Ten game. So I think we need to do a better job of holding the conferences accountable. Like this is a bowl game which you have a tie-in. And I don't want to say it's an obligatory tie-in because I don't think that's the case, but I do think you have to kind of say, "Hey, you signed up for this. The Big Ten has 7 bowl tie-ins. This is one of your bowl tie-ins. You have 16 teams now. There's no reason you can't honor that tie-in. Because I think even with when you send however many to the playoffs, let's say you send 2 teams to the playoffs, you've got 16 teams, another 7 bowl games. Obviously, the Quick Lane Bowl is going to be the lowest on their totem pole. It's the only one against a non-Power Four conference. But I think if you enter into a contract, you've got to hold them to it. And I think that goes for any bowl game. That's, whether it's SEC versus Big Ten. Obviously, different bowls are going to have different things. And the playoffs, of course, throw all of that off. But I think you got to hold these conferences accountable and say, hey, you agreed to send a team here, send a team here. I think then I would be far more okay with it being a champion who doesn't make the playoffs playing in a game like this because now you're guaranteed a higher quality opponent. Nothing against Nevada when they played Western Michigan a couple years ago. Nothing against Minnesota when they played Bowling Green this year, or New Mexico State when they played Bowling Green a year ago. But I think the Minnesota BG game had 7,000 more people there for a reason. That's a well-known brand. Minnesota. I mean, there was also other things on the line. Minnesota lost to Bowling Green at home 2 years ago, 14-10. A little bit of a revenge factor, but I think it's important. You're now getting a quality opponent, a quality Power Five or Power Four opponent against these teams. There's a reason attendance numbers are up when it's against a power opponent. When Minnesota played Central Michigan in 2015, 34,000 people were there. When Pittsburgh played Eastern Michigan, 35,000 people were there. There's a reason these numbers are up. You're getting a quality opponent, an unbeatable opponent. That's the other thing, too. I'm sorry, nobody wants to watch New Mexico State play Bowling Green in a bowl game. It's except for New Mexico State and Bowling Green. You get casual lovers of college football who just want to go to a game. I saw people at the game this year wearing Michigan jerseys, wearing Ohio State jerseys, wearing Central Michigan's, like fandoms from both conferences just there to enjoy a bowl game. Tickets are cheap. Game is exciting. It's an enjoyable, it's a great environment. I think you hold these conferences to that and say, hey, play this game as contracted. You're going to see attendance up. You're going to see viewership up, partially because of the power brand, and I recognize that. But now you've got something that these group of five schools can hold themselves to and say, hey, look, we played a power opponent and beat them in a postseason game. That's important. That's a huge recruiting tool as well.
I 100% agree. And I guess I'll push back a little bit with the Big Ten because they literally could not send teams in like most of those years, I guess, with the way that the order was. But this year, I liked how this year shaped up, honestly, because I guess with the Big Ten bowl lineup, because I thought all along that they're gonna send I forget which exact team I had, but I thought they're gonna send a Big Ten team to the guaranteed rate bowl. But instead, like I guess in an effort of goodwill, or I guess for the better of their programs, they gave that tie into the Mountain West, and instead we got just a phenomenal UNLV Kansas game
Hmm.
at the Diamondbacks ballpark. Just an amazing game. But that led to Minnesota getting a more, I mean, not only getting a more regionally um I guess beneficial game, but also preventing them from going to Arizona for the second time in three bowl seasons. So it's just cool how it's shaped up, and it's just cool, I guess, how I guess the Big Ten's hand was forced in a way, I guess, by geography to honor this bowl time. But I agree. I also think though, I think that I like the way the bowls are nowadays, especially with the group of five, how ESPN, I think there is some good to ESPN owning these bowl games. And I'll elaborate, of course, that sounds, that sounds anti college football, fan. But I think it's great how it's just gone back to the old days of college bowl games where you would read in the newspaper these teams are running, and there's a bunch of teams from different conferences from different parts of the country are in the running for each bowl game, where you actually have bowl representatives sent out to scout these teams and decide, hey, I would like this team, and then you have bargaining for these bowl games, which
Hmm.
I think is great. And I think that the next bowl cycle will have more of that, especially since I think with the playoff, there's going to be less room for I guess stratification and concrete bowl times. There's
Hmm.
gonna be less room, I think, in the playoffs. So I think we're gonna see more of that, which could come to the detriment of the Quick Lane Bowl and of course this Chicago Bowl if it does get started up in these realities that we're creating. But yeah, no, I totally agree though. Like holding the conferences accountable. It's just hard when it's like you're the Big Ten and it's like you have all these big name bowl games and it's like, a bowl game in our backyard against our perceived little brothers. It's hard. And I guess like make that, I guess, for the Big 12 too, a bowl game, in somewhere that's not our backyard against not even what's perceived as the best group of five conference.
Sure.
So yeah, I definitely think we hit all the bases with this one. I mean, every single possibility or reality that could come from having a Chicago Bowl. Do you have anything else to add, Alex, regarding this topic or anything else or promotions, of course?
Yeah, no, I think a big thing too that I didn't hit on is this is an important recruiting tool for the MAC to play a big opponent in their own backyard. But I think if you're a Big Ten fan, it's just as an important recruiting tool as you or for you as well. Obviously, you want to go get that stud quarterback from Pasadena, or you want to get that star running back out of Florida. Michigan has a lot of homegrown talent. Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, a lot of talent comes from those blue blood high school states. Texas, another one, obviously. Florida, again, another one. But there's a lot of talent in Michigan, and if you're, I don't know, if you're a MAC coach, getting to coach in a bowl game in Detroit is pretty cool. And I don't want to speak for Scott Leffler, who's been there the last 2 years. I don't want to speak for anybody else in the conference because I'm sure they have other things running through their mind aside from recruiting. It's, how do we win this bowl game? But I think if you're PJ Fleck and you're at Minnesota, you absolutely say yes to this game. You say, hey, I already have good recruiting pipelines in that area because I'm from this area. Why not go and say, hey, let's coach this game. Let's go try to win this game. a couple recruits come out, check out what we got. They get to see it firsthand more than just watching it on TV. They're not paying for this big recruiting visit. You get to see the action against a quality opponent, a quality G5 opponent. Bowling Green finished 7-5 last season. Lost that game 30-24 in the Quick Lane Bowl. But I think you get to see them play against a quality opponent who there's a good chance that recruit has visited. There's a good chance a recruit there visited Bowling Green, especially if they're a three-star recruit. Maybe a not very highly rated three-star recruit, but a three-star recruit probably visited Bowling Green. Now you get to see Minnesota, who's not pulling in the five-star recruits that Ohio State or Michigan are. I think it's a huge recruiting tool as well that way. And I think that that's a missed opportunity. But that's really all I had on the topic. I as always, I love being here and talking with you. And yeah, man, I appreciate you giving me a ring and saying, "Hey, let's talk some bowl games and let's talk some action." I'm always down.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate it too, as busy as you are, because it's easy for me to say, I'm bored with the off season. Here's something to talk about. But I appreciate you coming on, just despite like, covering every Mac sport and everything from every school too. So
Sure.
I really appreciate that too. But we'll see what happens with this bowl game. I mean, it's just a possibility. I mean, honestly, all the offseason content is just like, what if this happened? It's like let's
Hmm.
make a big deal about this. I think like a couple weeks ago I wrote about Tennessee State letting Ole Miss use their basketball court for
Yep.
for practice, and like, hey, you know what, these teams should play each other on the gridiron. And yes, it was content and like interaction farming, but it worked. It got Tennessee State fans talking about it because it's coverage on their
Sure.
team during a dead period. So I mean, I enjoy that, and I enjoy conversations like this. But yeah, I mean, until next time, I'm sure there'll be other bowl topics to talk about. I guess at the time of this recording, we're about 2 months out from the bowl schedule reveal, something I cannot wait for. But Alex, thanks for joining, and until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul. And this is the Burger Popper. So.